أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. الحمد لله رب العالمين، بارئ الخلائق أجمعين، باعث الأنبياء والمرسلين، ثم الصلاة والسلام على خير خلقه العبد المؤيد والرسول المسدد، حبيب إله العالمين أبي القاسم المصطفى محمد، وعلى أهل بيته الطيبين الطاهرين وصحابته المنتجبين. قال الله تعالى في كتابه الكريم: بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم: الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا، فالصالحات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله، واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن فعظوهن واهجروهن في المضاجع واضربوهن، فإن أطعنكم فلا تبغوا عليهن سبيلا، إن الله كان عليا كبيرا. صدق الله العلي العظيم. عطروا أفواهكم بذكر الصلاة على محمد وآل محمد. A second for the love of Imams Al-Hassan and Al-Hussein. A third for the love of Fatima al-Zahra with your loudest voices. Misogyny is the hate of woman, is the disrespect of woman. A misogynistic culture is a culture that has no respect for women, that has no value for women, that has no love for women. Islam has been accused of being a misogynistic faith, a misogynistic religion that gives no value or respect or dignity or honor to women. And they say it's proof. The proof is in your Quran, is in your scripture, in your holy books. And the Quran, and for you followers of Ahlul Bayt, in the narrations of your Imam Ali ibn Abi Talib alayhi salam, and Nahj al-Balagha. There are words, there are statements, there are sentences that are proof that Islam is a misogynistic religion, a religion that has no respect for women. Absolutely. A religion that encourages hatred towards women. Is this true? Does Islam preach hatred against women and females? This is what we will examine tonight, inshallah, and the coming nights. Tonight, we'll begin by examining the Holy Quran, because the Quran is our number one constitution, our number one source for Islamic laws, for Islamic theology. What does the Quran say about women? Are there any verses in the Quran that, in fact, degrade women and disrespect women and consider them different than men? Men are given superiority and more respect. This is what we shall examine. One of the first verses that is shown as a witness, they say, look, the Quran, and this verse that I just recited, they say in this verse, Allah clearly states that men are superior to women and have control over women. الرجال قوامون على النساء. Men shall have control over women. That means women are subjugated to men's authority and to men's power. Why? الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. Because Allah has favored men over women. This is how they translate and interpret the verse. Because Allah has favored men over women, and hence Because men are mighty and strong and have control over women, they have the right to what? They have the right to do what to their wives? وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. They have the right to beat them. They say the Quran says clearly in this verse that a man has the right to beat, physically beat his wife. وَضْرِبُوهُنَّ. And this verse is the most controversial verse in the Holy Quran. They say because it gives superiority to men over women. It allows men to have control over women. And proof of their control is to beat them, physically show aggression towards women. Now, if anyone has the slightest knowledge of the Arabic language, Arabic grammar, Arabic syntax, will know that this is not the meaning of the verse. الرجال قوامون على النساء. What does this mean? That men have authority over women and have control over women? No. Yes, this is a popular meaning, and it exists in some tafasir as well. قوامون, I've seen in several tafasir, they've translated to mean musallatun. Men have authority over women. Men possess control over women. This is in some tafasir. While you will see in other tafasir that qawwam does not mean musallat. Qawwam is not a person who has authority. Qawwamun means those who are responsible. Men are responsible for women. Not that they have authority over women. You see how the meaning changes completely? If you don't have a strong hold of the Arabic language, you will easily misinterpret one word and give a complete negative image of the faith, of religion. Qawwamun means those who are responsible of. أنت قائم على هذا العمل. That means you're responsible for this building, for this house. And the Quran, ما دمت عليه قائما, lest you uphold, and you're responsible for getting back your money. Our 12th Imam, we call him Al-Imam Al-Qa'im. عجل الله تعالى فرجه الشريف. Why do we call him that? Because he's responsible for our time. He's responsible for us. He's responsible for our guidance. Qawwamun does not mean those who have authority. This has been misinterpreted, with either willingly or unwillingly, knowingly or unknowingly. Men are responsible for their women. This makes a whole different meaning. Shaykh al-Tusi has mentioned this meaning. Al-Qadhi ibn al-Barraj, Sunni and Shi'i scholars have given this meaning to qawwamun, those who are responsible of. Men are caretakers of their women. They take care of them. They provide for them. They take care of them. They support them. They protect them. This is what the verse is trying to say. Not that men possess some sort of control and authority over women. They could boss them around. They could tell them what to do. They can issue orders. No. Some even went further and said that because of this verse, الرجال قوامون على النساء, men have authority over women, meaning women have no authority over themselves. That means a woman cannot become a leader. She cannot become a president. She cannot become a parliament member. She cannot become a minister. She can't hold any official posts. Why? Because if she has no authority over herself, her husband has authority over her, what sort of authority could she have over others? Because الرجال قوامون على النساء. Because men have authority over women. Women have no authority. This is incorrect. Qawamun means caretakers. Means those who are responsible for women. Not authority. Let's say that Qawamun means musallatun. Those who have authority. Men have authority over women. They have authority and that's it. Period. Full stop. Or there's a continuation of the verse. الرجال قوامون على النساء بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. طيب. فضل الله بعضهم على بعض. What is this verse alluding to? Who has the Quran favored over? Some say the Quran says فضل الله بعضهم على بعض means Allah has favored men over women. That's incorrect. This is a false reading of the Quran, a false reading of the verse. بما فضل الله بعض الرجال على بعض الرجال. Allah has favored some men over other men. The verse is talking about men. They are the topic of the verse. Allah has favored some men over others, either in physical might or in sustenance and rizq. Because some men make more money than others, more than others, they take care of their wives. Depending on how much they make, a person who makes a lot of money has to take care a lot of his wife, and he spends more. Someone who makes less money spends accordingly. They spend according to what they make. بما فضل الله بعض الرجال على النساء. No. بعضهم على بعض بعض الرجال على بعض آخر من الرجال. This is one reading. This is one reading of the verse. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا. So this is one reason why men, if قوامون means authority, this is one meaning. This is one reason. What is the reason? Because men spend. They have physical strength. They go out. They are breadwinners. They make money. They're physically able to protect their woman. Financially and physically able to protect. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا. And because men spend, because they spend, they're given authority. What does that mean? That means if a husband does not spend, he still has authority over his wife. He still can call the shots at home and says what they do and make decisions, important decisions at home. No. When you don't spend, you forfeit that right of authority. Even those that say qawamun means authority pending of these two conditions. بما فضل الله بعضهم على بعض وبما أنفقوا. If you spend, if you're the breadwinner of the house, you have authority in the house. If you don't spend in the house, you're making your wife spend with you and cut costs and spend on the expenses. Well, then guess what? You will share the authority with her. You will not be the only person with the authority in the house. Because your wife is helping you pay the bills and pay the costs, then you will be sharing authority with her. وَبِمَا أَنفَقُوا. طيب. So this is one. Here, Al-Alam al-Tabatabai in Tafsir al-Mizan, he says, الرجال قوامون على النساء. Men have authority over women. Hold on a second. Is the verse talking about all men and all women, or it's speaking in a specific context, in a family context? Husband and wife. It's talking about husband and wife. It's not speaking about all men having authority over all women. Even if we were to agree to this opinion that qawamun means authority, it's speaking about whom? A husband and a wife. Not all men having authority over all women. Because even some scholars, they said all men have authority over all women. Thus, a woman can never be in an authoritative position. For example, she can never be a marja because she lacks authority over herself. Her husband has authority over her. How can she have authority over others when she does not have authority over herself? Hold on a second. This verse is speaking about husbands, not all men. While Al-Alam al-Tabatabai, his argument is that all men have authority over all women. But according to other scholars, that this is incorrect. The verse is speaking about husbands, having authority over a wife. This is one. Two, even if a husband has an authority over his wife at home, he doesn't mean he has authority over her in all realms. Let me give you an example. if a female becomes a president, does that contradict her husband's authority at home? No. Let's say he has authority over her at home, but in political decision making, who has authority? She has the authority. She's his president. She has her political authority over him, while his realm of authority is where? At home. There's no contradiction. There's no contradiction whatsoever. It's like a son and a father. A father has authority over his son at home, but if the son becomes president, the son has authority over his father as a president, as a political decision maker. He will have authority. It's the same thing with a husband and wife. A wife can become a president, can become a parliament member. She can become a marja, as we will talk about later on. She can have that authority, but at home, if qawamun means authority, at home, the husband calls the shots. Of course, after seeking her counsel, after seeking her advice, he cannot become a dictator. He cannot call decisions without seeking his wife's counsel as a dictator. All scholars agree on this. طيب الرجال قوامون على النساء. This is one part of the verse. صلوا على محمد وعلى محمد. They say, what about the other portion of the verse? What portion? وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ, and those that you fear of their disobedience. Nushuz literally means to rise. Al-irtifa'. When a person no longer performs his obligations and becomes disobedient, he rises against his obligations. He rises, meaning he drops his obligations. ارتفع عن المسؤولية. Nushuz means disobedience. وَاللَّاتِي تَخَافُونَ نُشُوزَهُنَّ, and those of your wives, if you fear their disobedience, فَعِظُهُنَّ, first of all, admonish them. If that worked, so be it. If that didn't work, وَهْجُرُوهُنَّ فِي الْمَضَاجِعِ, abandon them in the bedroom. Don't share the bed with them. Go sleep in another room. Abandon them. Ignore them in the bedroom. And if that didn't work, وَضْرُبُوهُنَّ, and beat them. They say, is there any misogyny more than this? The Quran is saying, beat your wives. Beat your women. We don't see this in the Torah. We don't see this in the Injil. We don't see this in any other faith or religion. But this is in your Quran. Your Quran says, beat your women and wives. What do you have to answer? Here, this portion of the verse, scholars have dealt with this section in several ways and different opinions. Saying that a wife should be physically abused, this is one reading. This is one reading of the verse. There's other readings. Why do we ignore the other readings? Why do we ignore the other interpretations of the verse? Let me give you a couple of interpretations. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. The traditional view, if you ask the traditionalists, they tell you yes, you're allowed to beat a wife, but gently. You don't harm her. You don't break any bones. You don't cause her to bleed. You don't harm her. And preferably with a miswak, what you clean your teeth with. Okay. So this is one opinion. This is one traditional opinion. You have other opinions. You have other legitimate opinions. Another opinion says, hold on a second. Who told you that اضربوهن means to physically beat? Who said it means to physically beat? The word ضرب has come in the Quran in 6 different meanings. Has been used in 6 different meanings. Who told you that out of these 6 meanings, Allah wanted to physically beat? وَضَرَبَ اللَّهُ مَثَلًا. Allah gives. وَيَضْرِبُ اللَّهُ الْأَمْثَالِ. Allah gives examples. Here, ضَرَبَ or يَضْرِبُ is used in the meaning of what? To give. وَإِذَا ضَرَبْتُمْ فِي الْأَرْضِ. Here, in this verse, it is meant to travel. ضربتم في الأرض means to travel. If you're traveling long distances, in the Arabic language, the Quran refers to this as what? إذا ضربتم في الأرض means to travel. And so on and so forth. There are several meanings to the word ضرب. Who told you that it means to physically beat? One of the meanings of يضرب or ضرب is to ignore. Is to ignore. And this meaning has been mentioned and used in the Quran. أَفَنَضْرِبُ عَنْكُمُ الصَّفْحَ ذِكْرًا? Shall we ignore you on the day of judgment? The word نَضْرِبُ عَنْكُمُ الصَّفْحَ ذِكْرًا. This has been mentioned. And this is logical. This is logical. Look at the verse. The verse is saying that if you fear of a wife disobedience, she disobeys you, she leaves the house without your permission, oh, she's a disobedient wife. First you admonish her. Then you ignore her in the bedroom at night. You don't share a bed with her. If that didn't work, then you boycott her. You ignore her. You don't talk to her. You stop speaking to your wife. You don't speak to her. Not you beat her physically. You don't speak to her. أَفَنَضْرِبُ عَنْكُمُ الذِّكْرَ صَفْحًا? You ignore. And this is one way of getting attention. This is one way of getting your wife to listen to you. If you don't speak to her, then she'll be, okay, what's going on? Why is my husband upset? Why is he ignoring me? This is one way of dealing with a disobedient wife. And there's a narration regarding this verse. وَضْرِبُوهُنْ. The Imam says, وَلَا تَضْرِبُوهُنَّ بِالْعَصَى وَلَكِنْ اضْرِبُوهُنَّ بِالْجُوعِ وَبِالْعَرِيِّ. Don't beat them with sticks. No, beat them by not spending on them. By not providing them with clothing or with food. Don't spend on her. That in itself is a form of punishment. If she deserved, right? And there are men that deserve a punishment. There are men that need more punishment than a woman. But let's say that the wife is being disobedient. This is one meaning of it. وَضْرِبُوهُنْ means to ignore. And this is used in the Arabic language. Right now, what do we call strikes in the Arabic language? When a couple of workers or a group of workers go on a strike. Right now in Paris, there's a strike going on. What do we call it in Arabic? Adrab. What does it mean to strike? Not go to work. Ignore your boss. Ignore your work. To rebel. To be rebellious. Adrab is that you stop working. And this verse, وَضْرِبُوهُنْ, don't talk to them. This is one meaning. I'm not saying this is the meaning. I'm saying this is a possibility. Just like physical punishment is a possibility, this is also a possibility. Perhaps the verse is trying to say, ignore her. Don't speak to her. Don't speak to her. And believe me, for some, this is worse of a punishment. When you ignore a person, it's worse than to physically beat that person. When you ignore them, you don't say salam to them, when you don't speak to them. This is one meaning. Another interpretation to this verse is that nushuz, what does nushuz mean? Nushuz is not disobedience. It's a specific kind of disobedience. And that disobedience is infidelity. When a wife is using infidelity. She's not being loyal to her husband. She's leaving the house. She's abandoning the loyalty to her husband. And there's also proof for this as well. There's also proof for this interpretation. In his final Hajj, Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam was recorded saying, Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. And this hadith is in Sunni and Shi'i books. In Shi'i books, it's in Tuhaf al-Uqul. In Tuhaf al-Uqul. That Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam began telling men to take care of their women, to take care of your wives. And then he says, وَلَا تَضْرِبُوهُنْ, and do not beat them. إِلَّا أَنْ يَأْتِينَ بِفَاحِشَةٍ مُبَيِّنَةٍ, lest they perform a fahisha, lest they commit adultery. And again, this hadith has been mentioned in both sources, Sunni and Shia sources. So not just any sort of disobedience. You ask her to bring you a cup of water, and she doesn't, you get up and you beat her. No, there's no such thing. Unfortunately, this exists in our cultures. This exists in our cultures. But this is not Islamic. Islam does not encourage this. Islam does not justify such behavior. Just because your wife didn't listen to you, you get up and you beat her. No. Nushuz here, although nushuz means disobedience, but this is a specific kind of disobedience. And see, if you look at the verse, فَالصَّالِحَاتُ قَانِتَاتٌ حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ بِمَا حَفِظَ اللَّهِ. For those good women, those who protect themselves, حَافِظَاتٌ لِلْغَيْبِ, they protect in absence. What does that mean, protect in absence? They protect themselves in the absence of their husbands, meaning they show loyalty. فَالصَّالِحَاتُ حافظات قانتات حافظات للغيب بما حفظ الله واللاتي تخافون نشوزهن. Those who guard themselves in the absence of their husbands, and those that you fear their disobedience. You see, it's not any kind of disobedience. It's disobedience that is related to infidelity. Disobedience that is related to adultery. This is another interpretation. There's another interpretation. We have a scholar that says this verse has been abrogated. Nasakh. Yes, this verse is speaking about physical harm, but this verse was abrogated. Abrogation means that this verse is no longer applicable. Nasakh. We believe in nasakh. When one verse is abrogated, it no longer applies. Another verse comes and takes its place. For example, at some point, Muslims were required to face Bayt al-Maqdis, Jerusalem, at the time of Salah. This verse was abrogated. The Quran came and said, no, you shall no longer face Bayt al-Maqdis. You will face where? Bayt al-Haram, al-Masjid al-Haram. Similarly, we have a scholar, Al-Shaykh Hadi Ma'rifat, a very respected scholar. He says this verse has been abrogated. But abrogated by what? By the tons of narrations that we have that say a husband has to be kind to his wife. He needs to show kindness and mercy and compassion to his wife. And that if she commits a mistake, he should forgive her. He should not punish her. Rather, he should forgive her. We have narrations that state, عجبت لمن يضرب زوجته وهو أولى بها من الضرب. The Imam says that I am astonished at a man who beats his wife, but he is more deserving of being beaten. He is more deserving of being beaten. In another narration, the Imam says, عجبت لمن يضرب زوجته في النهار ثم يأتيها في الليل كالبهائم. He says some men are like animals. He beats his wife during the day, and then he comes to his wife at night looking for intimacy. Only animals do this. Only an animal does this. This scholar says we have tons of narrations like this that condemn beating one's wife. That means the verse has been abrogated. It is no longer applicable. Nasakh. You see, there are several interpretations. I'm not choosing one, and I'm not telling you which reading and which interpretation is correct. But there are various interpretations. Just like those that say, look, the Quran says women should be physically abused. We'll tell them no, there are other interpretations. In Islam, we have lots of opinions. You can't accuse all Muslims of believing in physical abuse because there's different readings and there's different interpretations. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. They say, but your faith, your Quran is misogynistic. Why do you give women half of the inheritance that you give men? The Quran says, وَلِلذَّكَرِ مِثْلُ حَظِّ الْأُنْثَيَيْنِ. A man shall receive double the shares of a woman. So if a father dies and he leaves a son and a daughter, the son will receive double the share of the daughter. The brother will receive double the share of his sister. Isn't this misogyny? Isn't this disrespect and lack of honor and respect for a woman? No, hold on a second. First of all, did you know that before Islam, during the days of Jahiliyyah, women did not have inheritance whatsoever? If her father died, a brother dies, an uncle dies, a woman does not inherit. There was no such thing as women inheriting during the days of Jahiliyyah. Islam introduced inheritance for the first time for women. However, because in Islam there's financial burdens on a husband, on men receive double the amount. Not because Islam is giving more money to men, no, but because there's a greater financial burden on the shoulders of men, they receive double the amount. For example, who spends in the family? A wife or the husband? A wife can spend. She can work. She can spend, but she doesn't have to. While a husband has to. A husband has to work and has to spend, whether he likes it or not. While a wife, it's up to her. It's an option for her to work. And it's an option for her to spend and pay the bills. If she does that, she's doing her husband a favor. And one day, if she refuses and she spends, this becomes a loan. This becomes a loan on the husband. He has to pay her back. If one day the wife decides to pay the rent, the husband has to pay her back. Lest she says, I don't want the money. This becomes a loan. So the husband has to spend, right? Men have to go to jihad, while women don't have to go to jihad. There's an extra burden. Men have to pay the diya, the blood money of any family member. If a family member kills someone by accident, who pays the blood money? And blood money is not a couple of dollars. No. If you accidentally kill a person, you have to give that person what is worth of 100 camels. 100 camels. How much is each camel worth? How much? Let's say $1,000. That's $100,000. Who pays that $100,000? Let's say you're broke. You can't pay. The men in your family, not the woman. Al-aqila. Al-aqila are the men in your family. They have to pay. This is an extra burden. This is a financial burden on men. Thus, Islam comes and puts a balance. Says men have to spend, they have to go to jihad, they have to give the blood money. We give them double the inheritance. You see? When you look at the overall picture, you will see that there's a balance. And men are not given favor over women. Sallu ala Muhammad wa ala Muhammad. They say, but the Quran says that the testimony of one man is equivalent to the testimony of two women. وَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ رَجُلٌ فَرَجُلٌ وَامْرَأَتَانِ. If you cannot get two male witnesses, then get one male witness and two female witnesses. Isn't that degrading to women? Two female witnesses are equivalent to one male witness? Isn't this disrespect? Isn't this misogyny? Isn't this a lack of respect for women to tell them that their testimony is half of that of a woman? Hold on a second. Hold on a second. Read the verse in its context. Don't take the verse out of its context. What is the verse talking about? What is the verse talking about? By the way, this portion is mentioned in the longest verse in the Quran, in Surah Al-Baqarah. And the verse begins as such, يَا أَيُّهَا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا إِذَا تَدَايَنْتُمْ بِدَيْنٍ فَاكْتُبُوهُ. If you are dealing with a business transaction, dain here isn't necessarily loan. No. Any form of buying and selling, but you're not paying the money now, there's a form of loan. If you go to a shop and you buy, for example, shoes, and you tell the shop owner that I'm not going to pay you now, I'm going to pay you next month. This is a dain. This is a form of loan. The Quran says, right. When you take out a loan, when you buy and you're not giving the money right away, write it down so that a month from now, a year from now, if there's a dispute, you'll go back to the book, to the letter, and see, this was the amount, this was the date, this is the day that you have to submit to me the money. Anyhow, and then later on in the verse, the Quran says, فَإِن لَمْ يَكُنْ رَجُلٌ فَرَجُلٌ وَامْرَأَتَانِ فَإِن لَمْ يَكُونَا رَجُلَيْنِ فَرَجُلٌ وَامْرَأَتَانِ. If you don't have two male witnesses, one male and two female. In what cases? What is the verse talking about? In financial cases. When there's a loan, when there's business, when there's money involved. The Quran says instead of one female witness, there's two. For each male witness, two female witnesses. Why? Because at the time when the verse was revealed, read the context. Look at the verse and its context. Who was the breadwinner? Who was dealing with money and business? Was it men or women? It was men. Men were doing business, not females. There were female business women. There were. Sayyidah Khadija alayhi salam. But she was what? This was a minority. The vast majority of business people were men and not women. Those who dealt with money, with dinars, was usually men. What does that mean? When you deal with something, you are most likely to remember it. When you don't deal with something, you are most likely to forget it. Hence the verse says, أن تظل إحداهما فتذكر إحداهما الأخرى. If one of the females forgets, the other one will what? Remind her. Why would a woman forget? Do women have a weaker memory than men? No, I assure you. Women don't. They don't. Each person's memory is good when it's pertaining to things that they deal with. What is it that you deal with? If you deal with books, you won't forget about books. If you deal with cars, you will remember all the names of cars. You won't forget the name of a car. If you deal with money, you are more likely to remember the numbers. You'll remember the business transaction. But if you don't deal with money, you're more likely to forget it. Now let's come back to the context. At the time of the revelation of this verse, I'm not talking about at our time. At the time that the verse was revealed, men were doing business and not women. So if a woman were to be a witness for a business transaction, there was a likely chance that she would what? She'd forget it. Was it 100 dinars or 200 dinars? Was it 150 dinars or 175 dinars? Why? Because she wasn't dealing with business at the time in that area, in the Arabian Peninsula. You see, you have to read the verse contextually to understand what it's trying to say. The Quran is not putting women down. Absolutely not. So because it's something that they don't deal with, you would need two female witnesses. So in case one of them forgets, the other one will remind her. Us men, we also forget. If it's something that we don't remember, if it's something that we don't deal with at all times, we'll forget. We'll also forget. Right? So it's a matter of memory, of what you deal with. What is important to you? What is your priority? Correct? If something is a priority for you, you're not going to forget it. But if something is not a priority for you, you're going to forget it. I have one of my teachers from Najaf. He would say this as a joke. He would say when a man, when he leaves the house, his mom tells him, bring me something from the market. There's a chance he's going to forget it. But if his wife tells him, bring me something from the market, he's not going to forget. Why is that? Because when he comes back and he doesn't have that thing from him, that thing with him from the market, his mom's going to forgive him. But is his wife going to forgive him? She's going to give him a hassle. That's why he's going to make sure he doesn't forget. He's going to make it a priority. When something is a priority for you, you're going to make sure you don't forget it. When it's not a priority for you, you might forget it. So this is not an issue of respect or dignity. No, it's a matter of memory when it comes to loans and money at that time, contextually. طيب. They say, why can't a woman become a marja'? Isn't this misogyny? Why don't you Shi'as have female maraja'? Hold on a second. There's two stories. One, can a female become a marja'? And two, is there a female marja'? These are two different issues. Don't mix. In the United States of America, can a female become a president? Can or she can't? She can. Have they ever had a female president? They've never had a female president. She can become a president, but they've never had a female president. We, in Shi'i scripture, in Shi'i theology, a female can become a marja', but she hasn't. That's another story. Why? Maybe some woman, maybe there are few that have taken this path. Or maybe because culture doesn't allow them. Not because religion. Maybe it's a cultural issue. Not because it's a religious issue. Otherwise, according to several scholars, when you come to their fiqh books, you will see that they say, we have not found a legitimate proof that says a female cannot become a marja', including Sayyid Muhsin al-Hakim, Sheikh Muhammad Hussein al-Asfahani, Sayyid Rida al-Sadr, the brother of Sayyid Musa al-Sadr, Sayyid Taqi al-Qummi, who recently passed away in Qum, top jurists and maraja'. They said we don't have significant proof to say that a woman cannot become a jurist, cannot become a mujtahid, or cannot become a marja'. So where's the misogyny? They say, why can't a female lead people in salah? Just like men lead, why can't a female lead? This is a different story. When in Islam, a woman cannot lead Salat al-Jama'ah. This doesn't mean that Islam disrespects women. No. The answer is obvious. And Salah, there's ruku', there's sujood, there's prostration, there's bowing down. Islam that cares for hijab and cares for female modesty and cares for a woman to be protected and not to be the center of a man's attention and not to be the center of his lust. Obviously, Islam will not allow a woman to stand in front of men and lead salat and to perform ruku' and sujood in front of them. Does this mean that Islam disrespects women? On the contrary, if in Islam women cannot lead salah, this is respect for them. This is not a lack of respect. Islam doesn't want a woman to stand in front of lots of men and to prostrate and to perform ruku' and sujood in front of them. It would be a lack of honor for her if she were to do so. So if Islam does not allow a woman to stand in Salat al-Jama'ah and lead Salah, this means that women cannot be leaders in Islam? No. Women can be leaders in Islam. We are gathered to commemorate a female leader in Islam. The first female leader in Islam, Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. A leader. And what kind of leader? A leader that stood and spoke in front of men and gave the most eloquent speech in front of men. Khutbat Fadak. Isn't this leadership? Didn't Fatima al-Zahra stand and speak in front of men? Of course, by observing full hijab. Fatima al-Zahra was a leader. What she did at her age and at that sensitive time and at that sensitive period, this was leadership. She stood and she fought for her husband's right to successorship, to the khilafah. This was leadership. In Islam, we have female leaders. We have figures like Sayyidah Fatima al-Zahra, Sayyidah Khadija, Sayyidah Zainab, and the list goes on. The first martyr in Islam was a female, Sumayya, the mother of Ammar bin Yasir. The first martyr in Islam was a female. There's a leadership post. In Islam, women can become leaders. They can lead the community. And not just for women, but for men as well. Read the Quran. The Quran says that there are some women that are role models for all believers, not just women, but for men and women. وضرب الله مثلا وضرب الله مثلا للذين آمنوا امرأة فرعون إذ قالت رب ابن لي عندك بيتا في الجنة. Allah says that we have set an example with Asiya, the wife of Fir'aun, for all believers, men and women. She's a role model for all. ومريم ابنة عمران التي أحصنت فرجها. Maryam is also a role model for all believers, not just women. She's not just a role model for women, but for men and women. فاطمة الزهراء سلام الله عليها. فاطمة, Imam al-Sadiq alayhi salam says, إنما سميت فاطم بفاطمة لأن الناس فطموا عن معرفتها. Because people don't know the status of Fatima al-Zahra. فطموا, you know, when a child stops breastfeeding, they call this فطام. لا يتم بعد احتلام ولا رضاعة بعد فطام. فطام is when a child stops breastfeeding, when he's prevented. إن الناس فطموا عن معرفة فاطمة الزهراء. People have been prevented of knowing the status of Fatima al-Zahra. Do we really know who Fatima al-Zahra is? In another narration, إنما سميت. Why is Fatima al-Zahra called Fatima? In another narration, إنما سميت فاطم بفاطمة لأن الله قد فطم شيعتها من نار جهنم. Because Allah has prevented her followers, her Shia, from hellfire. Do we know the status of Fatima al-Zahra? That the companions at that time, that they know the status of Fatima al-Zahra? Obviously they didn't. Because if they did, they would not gather wood and fire and stand outside the house of Fatima al-Zahra and threaten to burn down the house. If a person knows the status of Fatima al-Zahra, he would not say, they tell him, Fatima al-Zahra in this house, she's in the house, and you're threatening to burn down the house? He said, what in? So what? So what is if Fatima al-Zahra is in the house? This is a person that knows the status of Fatima al-Zahra. He knows her level. He knows who she is. Didn't this man hear her father, Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, state, إن الله يرضى لرضا فاطمة ويغضب لغضبها? He didn't hear this? That he threatened to burn down the house? And they gathered wood and fire and actually burned the house and opened the door. And he heard the voice of Fatima al-Zahra standing behind the door, speaking to him. Yet he opened the door and he kicked the door with his foot. And he felt that Fatima al-Zahra is behind the door. Yet he squeezed Fatima al-Zahra. And he ordered his servant to beat Fatima al-Zahra, to beat her on her face. And they crushed Fatima al-Zahra in between the door and the house. These are people that knew the status of Fatima al-Zahra alayhi salam. أنا لفيت للباب لكن ما علي حجاب. أنا لفيت للباب لكن ما علي حجاب. حسبي الرجيس من لذت خلف الباب. عصرني وسقط المحسين وصدر عاب. رحم الله الشيخ Muhammad Hussein al-Isfahani when he said these words regarding the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra. ولست أدري خبر المسماري مسماري سل صدرها خزانة الأسرار ومن نبوع الدم من ثدييها يعرف عظم ما جرى عليها الباب والجدار والدماء شهود صدق ما به خفاء. It's as if Shaykh al-Asfahani is telling those that deny the attack on the house of Fatima al-Zahra. He says, come and ask the door of Fatima. Come and ask the wall. Come and ask the blood stains on the wall, on the door. And they will bear witness as to the crime, as to the atrocity that was committed against Fatima al-Zahra. الباب والجدار والدماء شهود صدق ما به خفاء. Fatima al-Zahra would come to the grave of Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. She would come and complain to Rasulullah. Ya Rasulullah, you left us with these people. Ya Rasulullah, get up and see what these people did to us after you. Look at your companions, how they've treated me. They forgot what you said regarding me. فاطمة بضعة مني من أرضاها فقد أرضاني ومن أبغضها فقد أبغضني. Get up, ya father, and see what they've done to me. Amir al-Mu'mineen alayhi salam had built a house for his wife Fatima outside of the city. Why? Because the people of Medina, they came to Amir al-Mu'mineen. They told him, Ya Ali, tell Fatima to either cry during the day or to cry during the night. Because at night and at day, she cannot cry in both times. At night when we want to sleep, Fatima cries. During the day when we want to work, Fatima cries. So to tell her either she cries during the day or to cry during the night. Amir al-Mu'mineen built a house outside of Medina called Bayt al-Ahzan, the house of sorrows. Fatima al-Zahra would hold the hands of Al-Hassan and Hossein and go to that house from morning till night and shed her tears in that house and Bayt al-Ahzan. It's as if she speaks to her father Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. قامك يا بويا ما رعوني وخلاف عينك مرمراني وبر المدينة طلعوني ومن البكي عليك امنعوني ومن البكي عليك عميان عيوني يا ورا الباب لما نهيسوني للحايط ولي عصروني يابا كسروا ضلعي وسقطوني. She would come to the grave of Rasulullah. She would hold the dust, bring it to her nose, and she would smell the dust of Rasulullah. ماذا على من شم تربة أحمد ألا يشم مدى الزوان غواليا صبت علي مصائب لو أنها صبت على الأيام صرنا لياليا. لا حول ولا قوة إلا بالله العلي العظيم. إنا لله وإنا إليه راجعون. Raise your hands in dua. نسألك اللهم وندعوك باسمك العلي الأعظم الأعز الأجل الأكرم يا الله. اللهم لا تدع لنا ذنبا إلا غفرته، ولا هما إلا فرجته، ولا عيبا إلا سترته، ولا خوفا إلا آمنته، ولا رزقا إلا بسطته، ولا شملا إلا جمعته، ولا مرضا إلا شفيته، ولا غائبا إلا حفظته وأدنيته، ولا حاجة من حوائج الدنيا والآخرة لك فيها رضا ولنا فيها صلاح إلا قضيتها ويسرتها يا أرحم الراحمين. ولأرواح المؤمنين والمؤمنات والعلماء والشهداء نقرأ سورة الفاتحة مع الصلوات. اللهم صل على